One of the most common questions I get as a religious educator is, what's the difference between Catholic and Christian? Even among my students who regularly go to church, there's often a lot of confusion about what it means to go to one church instead of another. Someone who does not even identify with a particular Christian tradition might not even be able to see any difference if they just wander in. And people who come from different parts of the world, they might bring with them very different understandings of what makes one church different from another. How would you like to be able to recognize and interpret the differences between Christian denominations? What if you had the capacity to think through the historical development and the doctrinal teaching of different Christian traditions? Would it help you to understand your own tradition better? Would you be able to learn something new from a different perspective? If this is you, this course is for you. This course is ThinkCatholicEcumenism. So let's say I want to go to church. No, don't ask why. We aren't looking for that right now. Let's say I want to go to church, but I don't belong to one. What am I going to do? That's right, of course, I'm going to Google it. Okay, in maps here, I'm going to search church, and whoa, I've got a top 20 list here of churches. That seems legit. Oh, hey, look, I've got this great rating system. I could choose the church with the most stars. Or I could search by distance so that I can go to the closest church. Maybe I could walk to church. That'd be great. But what about all these other words that are coming up with church? What's Anglican or Orthodox? Lots of saints here. Maybe I should look up one of those. Does it matter what saint the church is? Oh, here we've got other churchy words like Redeemer and Grace and Evangelical. What do they even mean? Oh, and here's some seriously non-churchy words. The Rock, Community, Riverbend. What will I see if I go to one of these churches? Well, if I go into one of these churches, it might look like this. Or this. Or this. I might see someone preaching who looks like this. Or this. Or this. I guess I can imagine that the music might sound different. The sermon might mention different things. The people gathered might interact in different ways. What we have here is a good example of two related things about Christianity. The first is a good thing. We have a tremendous amount of diversity within Christianity. That is, Christianity consists of people from all countries, cultures, and languages, and they give expression to their Christian faith in distinctive ways. There's about 2.5 billion Christians in the world. Each one has a journey towards God that is deeply personal and also deeply connected to the church, the ongoing spiritual community of believers in Jesus Christ. Simply doesn't make sense to assume that each of 2.5 billion people think the same way, speak the same language, or even have identical spiritual experiences. Maybe you can see as I do that Christian diversity is a beautiful thing. Theologically, it demonstrates God's love for all people and the power of Jesus Christ to touch the lives of anyone, no matter their cultural identity. But the other thing all these churches in my hometown show us is that not everybody sees it that way. The second thing we see is division within Christianity. That is, Christianity consists of separated Christians whose disagreements about the meaning of what Jesus shows us about God and how God guides the church cause conflict and division, even though all Christians are united in Jesus Christ through baptism. Now, even though diversity is beautiful and to be expected, and even though disagreements are an inevitable part of living with diversity, division is not the same thing as diversity. Division happens when a disagreement becomes so profound that two Christians, or two communities of Christians believe they cannot remain in communion with each other and still faithful to Christ. Can you see why this would be so difficult and painful to Christianity? On the one hand, we have this deep commitment from God to gather all people to himself in Jesus Christ. And each baptized Christian feels that call and has the right to identify themselves as a legitimate child of the Heavenly Father. On the other hand, we have spiritual brothers and sisters who have put their trust in the same Christ, but who look at each other and say, "You are wrong, and you are so wrong, I cannot continue to sit down with you as a Christian." Attending one of these churches almost always means withdrawing from all the other ones. And that means whatever connection a Christian makes in a community, there is a broken relationship with other Christian communities. Our best guess is that right now there are 41,000 different Christian denominations in the world today. A denomination is an organization of local congregations or churches that are united in shared expression of faith, such as a creed, ways of worship, and common projects. Examples of denominations are Catholic, Orthodox, Lutheran, Anglican, Pentecostal, Evangelical, etc. Some churches and organizations identify as non-denominational, and sometimes that is to mean they serve several denominations. Non-denominational does not mean every denomination, because that's simply not possible. Today, in some parts of the world, there continues to be a deep distrust and ongoing conflict between Christians of different traditions. Some of these divisions are centuries old and have very difficult and painful shared histories, including war and persecution. In other places, there's a lot of acceptance between Christians of different traditions. There are many great examples on global, local, and personal levels of Christians searching their own hearts and finding Christ leading them to a greater understanding of those from other traditions. This is the benefit and the practice of ecumenism. Ecumenism is the movement to restore unity among the Christian churches. Unity does not mean an end to diversity. In fact, for people to be united, they need to be diverse. Otherwise, all that exists is conformity. But unity does mean that all division is overcome, that all Christians are able to look at all other Christians as brothers and sisters, even if disagreement continues while we live on earth. It does not take very much research in Christian history to see that division and conflict have led to violence between Christians. Besides the basic attractiveness of peace between peoples, it becomes doubly important for Christians who claim to follow Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, to strive towards ending all division and conflict between them. In fact, there's a clear and strong scriptural basis for all Christians to see division in the church the way that Christ sees it, as intolerable. The clearest verse I found for this is the Gospel according to John, chapter 13, verse 35. "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Jesus did not give too many commandments, but this one he insisted on, to love each other. He even makes it the determining factor in identifying who is following him. Another way to say this is that if you do not love each other, you are not behaving as my disciples. Later, Jesus prays to his Father that all who believe in him will be one, as Jesus and the Father are one. It's really important to him. And it doesn't take an expert to realize that if something is important to Jesus, it should be important to those who follow him. That is, desiring and working towards Christian unity is central to the identity of a Christian. It's not enough to sit back and wait for everyone else to come around to agree with me. And it's also not acceptable to continue to cause further division by the way I treat others, especially other Christians. My identity as a Christian depends on it. So where do we start? Well, the first thing is to see that what Christ wants, his Spirit has the power to accomplish. I don't. I cannot bring about Christian unity by myself. But Jesus can. So the starting point is cooperating with Jesus and obeying him. And I'm personally responsible for doing that among the Christian communities that I am in relationship with. But we can get better at this by praying and studying, and that's what we're going to do in this course. Think Catholic Ecumenism will give us some principles of how ecumenism can happen in a good way, as well as looking into the historical background of unity and division in Christianity. And finally, we will look at some present-day examples of Christians living diversity well, overcoming some of the wounds of division. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next lesson.